Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Kate Law and I'm the Membership and Learning Director here at the CCMA. In today's online seminar, it's supported by TechC, where we're going to be talking about using AI to improve CX whilst reducing costs. Today's seminar is hosted by Martin Hill-Wilson from Brain Food Consulting and joined by Andy Nolan, who's the Vice President of International Sales at TechC, and Luana Machet who's the product owner from Vodafone. Good afternoon, all. Thank you for joining me today. So we often hear at the CCMA members embarking on a digital self-serve journey and either doesn't quite go to plan as what they originally thought it was going to be, or either they're not really confident of how the technology can really add value to their customer experience. But do we really understand what a customer journey is and how technology can really add value to those customer journeys? And now with technology, as we've removed a lot of the transactional interactions, how can we make sure that technology can really enhance those customer experiences for our customers for the right interactions? Coming from experience myself and working from an insurance background, it's that a lot of our interactions were very manual. But actually, technology's evolved so much now, and we're using it from a connected living space and a connected living world where we can use technology to really enhance how we live our day-to-day lives. So I'm really looking forward to hearing today's conversation and to explore how organisations are using technology today to support them and their organisations, and more importantly, for their customers and their people. So Martin, over to you for today's conversation.
Thank you very much, Kate, and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much for coming along and spending an hour with us. It's the kind of format where we would like to encourage, as much participation as we can. We have got at our disposal the ability to ask questions in chat. We will be keeping an eye on that. So please feel free either to comment as we go through the discussion, share your own examples, and indeed ask questions. And we will answer those questions throughout. And if we have got anything that's outstanding, we're going to have a little concentrated session right at the very end to go in and ask some more of those questions for myself, Andy, Luana. So I hope that gives you the opportunity to feel sort of connected and also engaged. In terms of the format, we're not doing slideware at all. We're just having a good old-fashioned conversation. And getting you to think about it. Now, what we've got in the title of today's conversation, I think, are some incredibly important challenges and opportunities that are sitting here for us at this point in time. And I just wanted to kick off this session with a little bit of scene setting and hopefully trying to draw some threads together that will allow you to sort of reference your own priorities and your own challenges at this point in time. And, this part of the year is a busy one. I think most of us will recognize that we've got all sorts of conferences and events and things that we can turn up with. And certainly my last sort of 7, 8, 10 days has been out on the road, talking, listening, presenting, and getting a general sense of where everyone's at. And one of the things that I have certainly heard, two themes that I just want to address, is certainly it's no surprise that our customers are in a state of transitioning in terms of behavior and also in terms of expectation. I mean, we are all customers and we are all working for organizations in that sense. So it's something that we kind of intuitively and deeply understand. Since the pandemic kicked off, we obviously had that challenge of how do we do business in a world which has to be for a period of time contactless. And I think that opened up a whole number of innovative responses that we had. And we all know that digital first, or whatever we choose to label the next phase of our engagement strategy, kicked off. Many of us opened up particularly new text channels. Some of us have started to experiment with this modality, which is, video. And we've discovered that that's actually not a strange or thing, but actually quite normal and something that's embedded into a digital lifestyle in today's world. And the other thing we've understood is that, the disruption of first pandemic and now cost of living, the rise of vulnerability, all those meta themes that we keep discussing, has actually produced a much more difficult environment in which we can guarantee the quality of the customer service, particularly with regard to our availability. You know, I saw another stat this morning from yet another survey talking about the perception that people have that the quality of service has actually declined rather than increased. And that's not good, by the way, in an environment where uncertainty produces stress and anxiety. We have shorter fuses, and we really do want our brands to step up and take care of us. So within that sort of general environment, we have found much more experimentation. And it's quite clear that with that volatility, one of the key goals is to protect access to live assistance as and when we really truly do require it. And you know, you've probably heard me say more than once, when it's emotive, when it's complex, when it matters to the relationship, that's when it really works. And we've got evidence of the fact that we're going in the right direction. Conversations are getting longer for the right reasons. And we are beginning to make sure that we can offload some of the less complex to self-serve, and some of us even to proactive, because we've got some fairly intelligent ways now to recognize patterns of demand and anticipate them before they become an inbound request. So we're kind of going in the right direction. One thing, though, I have noticed, and many people will put their hands up and say, I would agree, is that the potential of self-service has not been realized as quickly as it needs to be. And if we're going into what most people will say is going to be probably quite a challenging winter for all the reasons that we don't really need to go through, we've got to make sure that our experience delivered to customers is one which is, as much as possible, feels responsive, feels low effort, and delivers the outcome that they want. And the fact is that we're not getting to that self-serve as fast as we need to get to. So one of the things that we want to explore today is, you know, why is that? The tech has never been better. If you go underneath the bonnet, it's smarter than ever before, and yet we're not getting scale in a way that we could do, and we absolutely should do. So that's one thing I want to look at. The other thing I want to look at today is that when we talk about channel choice, we often use a shorthand, which I find slightly confusing, which is called voice and digital. Voice often being the thing that we thought we were about to wave goodbye to about a year and a half ago, only to discover, gosh, shock, it's come back into the play. And many people now predict it's due to grow. And for my mind, I was never comfortable with digital. For me, it's a context digital, it's not a channel. And for my own language, I much prefer to think in terms of the mode of, you know, and voice is very strong, obviously. So is text, and also so is video. And today, particularly with some of the stories that I know Andy can bring us into the conversation, the real opportunity that video offers a certain number of particular use cases. And for anybody out there in the conversation today that basically sells and needs to look after stuff, things, product, this is a particularly interesting and a particularly useful story. But I wanted to start off really with us getting into the boots of, you know, the change that we've all made from a traditional voice-only call center into, let's adopt the language, a digital-first agenda. And I know Luana's done a terrific amount of work over at Voda in terms of the journey that they've been on. And maybe that's one of the key messages. This is not something you do in 3 months and then it's all done and dusted. It's a journey for sure. And it would be great, Luana, if you could step us through some of the key changes and milestones that you've seen over the time and position us in terms of how you're trying to provide greater variety in that contact mix and some of the things that you've experienced as you've gone through that journey.
Yeah, hi. So like many businesses, we were always traditionally very heavy on our voice channel. Always the way. I'd like to think, I mean, I haven't done any studies on this, I'd like to think that we were relatively early adopters of it, you know, of sort of in the move to digital, if you like. So going from a voice heavy business, we actually initially started looking at web chat in sort of 2009, 2010, which I believe is relatively early days. You know, it was back in the days when you used to have to email a customer with a link to be able to come back and chat to us. So just give you a bit of context as to how early that was. And you know, the initial intention actually was twofold for us. Firstly, a desire to replace email, because as much as customers think they love email, actually it's not a good channel to serve customers on at all. But you know, there were customers that expressed a wish not to speak to us, and we felt that web chat would be a good fit for that. So that was kind of the initial reason for it. And then secondly, looking at how you start customers on their digital journey, and web chat just seemed like a really good fit for that. Once you've got them in a digital environment, you know, they may then start to consider using some of the self-service tools that you have available. So initially, our approach was, quite light touch. When a customer came to our website looking for a place to speak to us, instead of having a phone number, we'd have a button say, why don't you try chatting to us? Just a very gentle prompt. We wouldn't take away the choice, because ultimately, a lot of customers at that stage had no idea what web chat was. They would just disengage if we did that. So, they would want to continue to speak to us on the phone. Over the years, gradually, and it did take a number of years before we really got any adoption of web chat at scale.
Mm-hmm.
But as we saw that gradually ramp up, you start to see customers, exploring a little bit more what other options are available to them. Oh, there's a little link there where I might be able to go and see my bill, as an example. So that was the kind of the starting point. And gradually we worked through some of the online journeys that we had, the call to actions in terms of calling us, emailing us, and started replacing some of those with web chat, where we felt that it was a good opportunity for us to do that. Once you've then got customers kind of used to having that available to them, you then need to start gradually steering. So as we all know, there's certain kind of customer intents are serviced better in voice, some are good in digital, some are good in web chat, and you want to start to not take customers' choices away, but just gently steer them into potentially the best channel. One of the things we did sort of in the early, what do they call it, the noughties, I don't know what you call it, was we had a contact us page, and we'd try and disambiguate a little bit about what the customer's intent was, and based on what they said to us, we would go, actually, okay, for that complex billing query, give us a call. Simple transactional query, click this button, chat to an agent, would do it for you there and then. And obviously, as we know, web chat brings efficiencies as well. So, it was supporting us on that side in terms of our agents being able to deal with a couple of simple queries at the same time, whereas in voice, it was very traditional, one customer, one query. At that point, then, when you have web chat and you have those transcripts and those conversations, it's really rich in terms of being able to see why customers have come to your website. It's really, really interesting. And it was something, it sounds like really noddy now, but back in those days, it was really cool. And you could see why customers were coming to the website. So you think, well, actually, that's really simple. So we can build something in our app, or we can build something in our logged in platform that would service that. And that was kind of the real start of our journey in terms of really exploiting those capabilities beyond the very basic, go see your bill, this is how much you've got to pay. Really looking at, well, actually, these customers, they're going abroad, they want to lift their roaming bar, they want to know how much it costs to make this call, they want to control this element of their account, they want to have content control. So gradually over the years started to build up those capabilities, and web chat was a real enabler for that. And then you had the advent of bots. Mm-hmm. And as we know, bots aren't perfect. They take a lot of work to develop. And back in those days, they were very simplistic. So initially, when we started exploring our bot, which many of you will have heard of, was Toby, the intention was primarily to use the bot as a channel steering engine. So I know I keep coming back to channel steering, but this was kind of our real focus back then, before we had the really smart self-service capabilities. So we would have the bot would disambiguate what the customer wanted to do and then push them into the best channel. Now, we started off some really basic journeys like, where's my nearest store? And the bot would say, click this link. Here is our list of stores. You can go there and do that. That previously may well have ended up with a web chat agent. Where the bot didn't know what the customer was saying. I mean, I think we only taught it with 10 intents initially. It wasn't me directly. One of my colleagues worked on that, but I think they initially did 10 intents. If it was outside of that, the bot would just send you straight to a human. So the bot, one of the very first things we did was integrate the bot into our web chat. At no point was the bot ever a standalone feature, because that's no good. So the bot would always hand over to an agent at the point where it couldn't do anything. And kind of built that up over time. As you get customer utterances, you get to see what customers are asking, you respond, you build content accordingly. Another thing that we learned sort of partway through the journey is the best people actually to help the bot are your agents. Your agents know best what your customers want and how best to respond to those needs. So we've been through several programs where we've used our agents to help train our bot, and actually nowadays within our bot team we have a lot of our sort of top agents or previous agents working there in terms of the actual bot training, and that's something that I would encourage any business to do if you have the option. Once you've kind of got that, the basic stuff out of the way, then you want to start to exploit the technology to its full potential, which is where you start integrating it. So again, our wonderful Toby team started building integrated journeys, which connected directly into our backend systems. So for example, if you go to Toby, there are some really nice journeys in there now. Actually, it's taken some time and some effort, but really worth it. You know, if you go to Toby now and say, look, I'm going abroad, I've got a bar on my phone, can you lift it? Toby will go through that. We'll go in, we'll DPA you, so ask you security questions, establish your identity so it's completely secure, go in the back end, lift the bar. And then, you know, even to the point now where there's predicting what the next action customer wants to do is. So inevitably, customers are probably going to want to know how much it's going to cost to use their phone while they go abroad. So at that point, the bot will then say, look, do you want to know this as well? I can help you with this as the next step. So yeah, that's where we're kind of at with it. And because you've developed those integrated journeys, you're taking the really boring transactional stuff away from your call centers, you're putting it into the bot, you're using your agents. It's not about laying off agents, we don't do that. It's about using your agents where customers really need them. You know, for example, we knew every business during COVID suffered with problems in terms of influxes of contacts and things like that, and our bot really allowed us to sort of save our agents for that really important stuff. And you know, we all thought that voice would be dead, long live the bot, so to speak, but that hasn't actually happened. You know,
guess what
yeah customers still want that as a channel.
I mean, in reality, what we have is a choice of you know, mainly voice, mainly text. We're going to talk about video in a while, but it's turning up as the third part of that stool. And you can deliver it live, or you can deliver it through self-serve, or if you're really clever, you can get proactive with it. And that's actually what's going on. There's a set of choices, isn't it?
It is, and don't think of voice as being an assisted channel. Actually, our focus now is, you know, everyone's focus now should be on how you digitize voice. It's not going away, so digitize it.
Yeah.
Use what you've learned online and stick it in a voice channel.
Absolutely right. So I think there's a lot of really valuable lessons sitting in there, and it answers one of the key things why self-serve hasn't grown. I think many people have lacked the patience to go on that journey, you know, and you start from a point of really developing positive habits in your customers, and then starting to extend the functionality and the value of what you're doing. And of course, we're not stupid as customers. You know, the fact is, if I don't have to queue and I can get my outcome, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep using Toby, or whatever we call that way of interacting. And, you know, whatever the degree that we've done it, the more that we can recognize an utterance, you know, connected to an intent, and deal with that without having to have somebody do it. Or, by the way, if we get so far down the journey, then provide a seamless connection to a live assistant who knows context and knows, you know, intent without having to repeat. We've actually got a very powerful way of serving customers in a new paradigm, haven't we? You know, and all that work.
It's a really important point, is that bots, no matter how well they're trained, will have challenges. Everybody speaks differently. You can only train it so far.
Yeah.
You need to have that seamless ability. There's nothing more frustrating than using a bot and just going round and round in circles. You know, if the bot doesn't get, you know, I always have this rule in my head, I don't know how other people do it, where if it can't disambiguate the first time, try again by all means, but actually that's at the point where
that's it. Zip, go give me someone to talk to. Yeah, don't send me around that loop. Oh, you'll drive me nuts. But another interesting point you gave me there, which was using frontline teams. For me, one of the secrets of everybody who's managed to get up to the 50-60%, you know, mark of dealing with inbound, seems to have the characteristic of being agile with it, continuous test and learn, but also having a very diverse set of skills in the team to make it work. And part of that expertise sits very much with those that do the talking to the customer. You know, they understand the language, they understand the problems. And to the other point we made when we were rehearsing this, interestingly, language keeps changing, doesn't it? So you have to continuously refresh those language models and all the rest of it. So thank you very much for that, Luana. That's a great scene setter. And I think that's one that our audience will recognize they're on the journey on. I think you're still waving a flag for many of us in terms of how far you've got and how much further we've got to go. But it's a great scene setter to say, within that context of assuming that we're using primarily text, sometimes voice, in order to be able to understand intent, what happens when you open things up into the other modality called video, and potentially look at it in a different way and say, how can we transpose that approach to life when we're dealing with product? And many of us deal with product. We've got all sorts of different things from a consumer point of view in our house, everything from a doorbell that's smart through to a router that doesn't work, through to all the kit that all our kids have these days. And then if you look at that in an industrialized context, gosh, how much stuff is there out there and how many people are in field trying to service all of that stuff? And in that particular context, Andy, we've got some exciting stories to tell, haven't we, about new ways of looking at the delivery of great customer experience, the reduction of cost, and reinventing the wheel in a really kind of a smart way. So tell us first and foremost, what does TechSee do and what's fundamentally clever and new about it?
Yeah, and I'll just add this on to the story of the Vodafone example as well. So many people perhaps heard about TechSee in the pandemic because the contactless mode of supporting customers became, the only way to do things. So if you were a Vodafone customer and you needed some support with a product, an engineer couldn't come into your house and fix that for you. So our first real way of supporting customers, both here in the UK and around the world, was using video to see things that the customer would see. So, trying to get that explained over a voice call or a chatbot was obviously very difficult to do when you could just perhaps hold up your mobile phone, point it at something, and you straight away you had computer vision. You could see what the customers were seeing. So that's really where we started with TechSee, and it enabled both customers and also the people servicing them to get those problems resolved without the need for either someone to go to site or to spend a long period of time on the call trying to negotiate that journey. What we've seen post-pandemic is quite a change in attitude around acceptance of self-service. Vodafone are talking about that now. More people are happy to use self-service and automation if it gives them the right outcome. So the couple of examples specifically I wanted to talk about, which Vodafone are starting to use in different parts of their business, more recently in Spain, is the ability to have that journey that you might want to do, either from setting up the product, what we call unboxing, and even to the troubleshooting side of it. So why spend the time with a chatbot to be transferred into the contact center when you can enable the chatbot, what we call, a visual bot now, with the capabilities to understand what's going on with your product or your problem and solve that for you without having to speak to anyone. That's the power we're offering. We call it visual intelligence. So it's moving away from AI. People probably think of AI as an abstract concept. What does it actually deliver? Is it, some sort of advanced technology that no one understands? Actually, there's real applications for AI in our field, because what we're doing is taking the ability for artificial intelligence to understand something and build that into a process that in Vodafone's case already exists. They already have customer journeys and flows, but to start to add some value in there that either means they don't have to dispatch an engineer to site, or they can improve the first call resolution, or in fact maybe not even have the call come through to the contact center itself. So unboxing a router is our typical one. The setup of that, you can just use your phone, scan the QR code, and our bot can guide you through that particular setup process. And the other thing I wanted to say, which Lina said is the important part of this, is when the digital journey or the self-service journey hits some problems, if you can then transfer that and the history through into someone in the live operation, that really deals with the frustration element. Many of us have been in self-service, whether it's chatbots or other processes, and found that you hit a dead end and there's nowhere to go, or you have to call back in or start that again. So really what we're trying to offer is to complement your existing customer journey by adding AI that really gives you an outcome that's either to reduce field service visits. You may have heard the term truck roll. It's something started off in America, but we're hearing it over here. The truck roll is essentially a field service engineer dispatch somewhere, and then obviously reduce the need for the contact centre to take as many calls. And that has some very, very compelling benefits to everyone, all stakeholders involved. Customer gets their problem or their unboxing issue solved first time all the time. If it can't, transferred into someone live. I think we heard about agent retention and recruitment. We found with many of our customers, as with Luana said with her organisation, you don't have to sack people to get this technology in. That's not what it's about. Actually, the agents can be upskilled to do more important functions, and the more routine stuff can be moved into self-service. So the agents either in the field, so that the technicians can move into, don't have to drive around in the van so much. They can perhaps do some of that from home or an office, like many customers that have done. And in the contact centre, they can move up the value chain and do more higher value. And in all of the technology epochs, that's tended to be what happens. People don't typically lose their jobs. There is some operational savings, but they tend to move up the value chain and do more valuable tasks, hence improve productivity. And just final point, so I don't ramble too much, the benefits are for the business as well, because obviously they see improvements in customer satisfaction, they see cost reduction, and they see a lot of their operational metrics improve substantially as well. We see, in the field, it's not uncommon to see 50% reductions in field visits, in contact center, NPS scores going up 20%, or reduction in calls by 20-30%. Very, very big numbers that I've not seen in any other industry, certainly for a while. So they're the main things that, if I was to say what we do at TechSea, it's really about improving those customer journeys, but not just improving how they work, getting a much better outcome, and not the typical 2 or 3%, but the 20, 30, 40, 50% improvements in outcome productivity.
So I think because AI has certainly moved from being wonderful and mysterious to being essential, it is worth just pausing for a second to talk about what we're really doing here from a technology point of view. AI being a big fat word doesn't really help us, but it helps much more to understand that what you can do is replicate the recognition process that humans do. And when we're in the context that Luana was talking about, in fact, I've got a question for you here, Luana, comes from James saying, where's it gone actually? He's just moved it on, but he basically said, are you using voice recordings to also help train the language models that you are already doing? Because you made the point earlier on, which is a very important one, having got people now to communicate to us via text, those become fantastic training material for a model that can basically say, I now recognize the question around of topic X and all the different ways that customers can ask about topic X. And when it gets to a certain point, then it can recognize it, and then you can drive a self-service outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I popped a response in the chat, but it's a really good question, actually, because when we did sort of first launched our bot, because we were very voice heavy at the time, although we did have chat and we used a lot of the chat data, we did also use our voice data quite heavily, because in the IVR, it helped us to understand how people ask questions. It gave us a wealth of data in terms of, you have an intent, these are the 80 ways that people ask that intent. And that translated really well to the bot. And as of now, in our IVR, like many companies, we can categorize intents, we can route them accordingly, whether it be self-service, whether it be to an agent. So the focus now is not on using, that was right back at the beginning, we don't really focus on using our IVR for our bots anymore. We just don't, because we've got so much data in the bot. Actually now, like I said at the end of my speech, that's one word, we're looking at digitizing our IVR because it's not going away. So now it's the opposite way around, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We now use what we've done online to
drive a better voice experience. Okay. So really essentially what's happening, the magic of AI, for those of us who just wants a simple way to understand it, is that you build up a certain volume of instances of that topic, and the magic of AI is its ability to predict and say, although it's not exactly expressed like this, we're going to tell you that's probably what the person's talking about, number one, and secondly, it continues to learn and absorb more of the stuff. So over time, it gets smarter and smarter. And those are the two things that really, in this context, AI is kind of bringing us. And that's really the origin of what we sometimes talk about, conversational AI, and how you can have that kind of intelligence, which is the thing that you were talking about there, Luana. So if we now transpose that, Andy, into your world, what is AI learning about? If we give the example, I don't know, let's think about a sort of a doorbell. Let's just take that
one of
as an
these.
example. There you go, one of them. Give me one of them. So in addition to, I've got the idea that this is now able to see it, right? And me, the customer, is pointing at that thing, and somehow me, the advisor, as a human, or me, the virtual assistant, is quote unquote seeing it. But what is actually happening to make it sense that it's that particular type of thing as opposed to any other type of thing? What's happened?
Exactly. So our USP, our IP in this whole technology stack, Martin, is really about onboarding and understanding a device like this. So you've all got something like this in your home. I wouldn't know the difference between this one. I know it's blotting out a little bit. So the carpet one and the hard surface one. I'm not an expert in these things. So what we're really doing is using our technology to train the AI to understand, recognize, and not just the device. So it's not just recognizing it's this, but also what that device needs to do. So in the case of perhaps a router that Vodafone might use, it's understanding the product itself, so it identifies the type of product, the type of router, everything on that side, but then it's also understanding what needs to happen as part of that as well. So in the router case, it could be detecting the LED lights, it could be detecting the cables that go in the right place and the ports, and we verify that along the way. So that's on the router example. So if you were setting up your router, you could do that with an agent or a technician, but actually our self-service visual bot, in conjunction with our partners that use it, it's really understanding that product, perhaps from you're scanning your QR code the first time you get the product, or you're opening the box up. It will guide you through the app on how to set that product up, but also verify it along the way. So if you put the cable in the wrong place, it will tell you which cable you need and how to do it. And then back to products, consumer electronics are another key one. Most of the consumer electronics companies have an app. They can unbox it. And what we're doing is adding the intelligence into that to recognize what this is, where it goes, and also to verify that it's working as well. It's not just good enough to have, it recognize that this is a particular, the hard floor element, but where it needs to go. And then more importantly, if you've got a problem with it, what are the steps you need to do to resolve the problem? If it's not working, and in this particular case, a customer managed to reduce field service visits by 50% by using the app. The idea is, how would you use AI to fix that problem? And we can guide someone through the customer's existing journey to recognize what's got wrong, verify that it's been fixed, and ultimately get an outcome without, in most cases, the need for them ever to speak to a human.
Because I've got connection at my end to say when that router's been rebooted, I can see if it's now gone live and it's functioning correctly. So
correct, and all that telemetry data, we're providing that as part of the existing journey. So we're adding the value, and in the telecom example, all that telemetry data, is the broadband circuit live? Is the account set up? Is already there. We'll just add our bit of intelligence with the visual over the top. So if the customer's got red lights on the front of their router, we can guide them through the next step in the troubleshooting journey to resolve that. And I think the benefit in customer experience and frustration for the customer is obviously evident straight away.
Yeah. So let's just step that through slowly. I mean, the first and obvious point to make is that fixing stuff, it's so much easier to see stuff than talk about stuff, listen about it, or indeed read it. Yes, I mean, that's why YouTube videos exist. But I think the point you're also making is that YouTube videos are sort of still one-way communications. They're not interactive, and they're not specifically contextually sensitive to that individual customer. So they often miss some of the stuff, and we've still got frustrations. The thing hasn't worked, right? So we're still in that environment. And what you're saying is that we can connect recognition of a device to knowledge of that device in terms of troubleshooting it, installing it, or whatever. You can do that through a kind of a visual bot who provides that interface. And presumably, if things don't go always to plan, you can take that and then put me in connection with a live assistant who, I guess in best practice terms, has all that context and where we've got to in the problem, plot on screen, and I can just finish off the last 100 meters of that journey and everybody's happy. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
That's exactly right. And I think it's important to stress that there's always going to be a scenario where the self-service or the AI doesn't resolve that particular, either a setup issue or troubleshooting problem. There's always going to be those. Luana said language changes, not only language changes, but technology changes. So we always like to have the option to transfer into live. But if you've gone from, perhaps 70% of your interactions with your customers being live to turning that on its head, and it's only 30%, you'll then have more people available with the right skills to help them. And you can focus on, as Luana said, making sure they're building more of those journeys that add value to the intent side of it. So we know the intent, someone's got a problem, they need it resolved. How do we do that as best we can to get that customer, through their problem or through their setup as quickly as possible?
Right. So we're really, again, it's back to the core, value proposition of driving more self-service effectively, and certainly taking some of that out of the live assistance, even if not the whole journey, freeing up therefore live assistance. That's fantastically important. And that's more relevant than it ever was before, because we've got problems in the contact center space keeping our people. I guess a lot of the scenario that you're working in, Andy, as well, is in field-based expertise, where I'm physically moving from A to B to go on site to go fix stuff. And the story of that since the pandemic is that many people have maybe retired, just not come back into recruitment of. All of that has been severely challenging. So even if I could afford it, it's often difficult to meet those kind of demands that customers have got, because simply I can't resource it in the way that I used to.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that acutely in some territories where there's labour shortages. There's just not enough people in the field. We've got people dropping out of the workforce with, lots of years of experience. So for the field-based organisations, or if you're using contractors, we've seen that as one of the biggest benefits. One of our customers in the US they've just done their earnings call, and they reported that they'd reduced their engineer visits, or truck rolls as they call it, by 1 million. 1 million truck rolls reduced by using this sort of technology. So there are some big results. I just want to circle back, Martin. Someone, Raj, asked a question about how we use, or can we jump into a particular stage in a video. The place we normally start with a product is the manual. Now, in the olden days, the manual was a paper or an electronic PDF that you'd read through. It's gone to YouTube because people like me don't read instruction manuals. So the answer is to the question, can we use the existing video or manual? Actually, we start with that in our onboarding of a device. That's what we would work with. And then if a customer's at a certain point and it fails through the existing process, the AI jumps in to help them at that point. So I just want to stress that AI is only there to add value. If it can't add value, we don't deploy it. So typically, as the question was asked, can we use the video and the script? We absolutely do use the video and the script, and we'll only deploy the AI to essentially fix that bit of the problem that either we didn't verify because we didn't know, the cable was in the wrong place, we hadn't detected it, or we let the customer skip by the steps. So just on that point, but fully circling back again to the field-based side of it, for contact centers, they're not always as closely linked to the field organization. So, if you're looking at the cost of dispatching someone in the field, it's typically the cost to serve in the field is, typically 10 to 100 times more expensive than it is to service someone in the contact center. So there is a real operational need to try and focus on the field to make sure that we're not dispatching engineers when we don't need to, but also to get the right outcome. It has two benefits.
I've got it. By the way, Luana is doing an absolutely sterling job in chat. So if you want to queue up to get live assistance from Luana, please do. By the way, we've got two systems of communication going on. We've got chat, as you can see in your bottom bar, but there's also a thing called Q&A. And Luana, there's a couple of questions there. One from Steve about what do you mean by digitizing IVR? And the other one is, the choice of modality between voice and text. If you get a chance to answer those, that would be super at the same time. But if there is a clear interest in that, let's have that as a parallel track of conversation. Keep plumbing away about that one and going on, because there's a lot of interesting discussion going there. Andy, at the same time, I would like to keep talking about the examples, really, more than anything else. tell me about, I mean, one of the things that comes to mind for me is I know there will be people in the audience here today who are running a classic contact center, selling things like, I don't know, boilers and stuff like that, where they have got a relationship with another part of the organization, which is kind of like this in-field team. Often the point of contention is then on that scheduling part of getting somebody out quick. Really tough to do in today's world. Housing, you know, that's another one I know that lives and dies by the speed at which we get those repairs done. All of that kind of stuff, and it can be very sort of frustrating. So have you got examples of those types of environments and the degree of change? You know, what can you drop out in terms of cost or responsiveness or NPS, anything like that, to try and bring it to life?
Yeah, there's actually a substantial amount of customers getting benefit already. So in the utility space, if you're providing that sort of service, we've just gone live with a customer using that now. The amount of engineers, you know, field-based people they send to fix leaks or waste, you know, it was particularly high, and they get there and it's either not their issue because it's on the customer side of the scenario, or they don't actually find a problem when they get there. So using visual to help that is starting to impact substantially on that. Inside the consumer world, some of the devices that they're using, whether it's home, you know, smart home technology, consumer devices, it's actually quite difficult to resolve those issues without seeing what the problem is. I've been and listened to some of those calls and seen some of the feedback. The average handle time is long because you have to ask the customer how to resolve the problem, and it just takes so long when you can just hold up your phone and like, oh, okay, I'll see what the problem is. You know, the old picture speaks 1,000 words is the obvious one there. And as I say, that started with live, but what we're seeing now is the intent is to resolve a problem or to improve a process. Well, if you can get that knowledge that's in your field engineers or within your contact center and put that into a journey that has AI powering it to detect and verify it, those changes are substantial. So I mentioned, you know, the ADT example there in America. They've seen those results, you know, substantially improve most metrics that they will be interested in. You know, bottom line in terms of money saved, field service dispatcher engineers, having enough actual people in the organization to service their customer base, and then obviously to scale when you're launching new products. Would you launch that again with a, you know, needing to recruit and train a field service team, or can you use the power of the, you know, the learning you have in your organization to train an AI to do some or all of that for you? So that benefits customers because they get that done quicker, benefits your people in the field because, you know, perhaps they are moving into, you know, a remote work for that, or a, you know, higher tiered job, and in the contact center they're really getting to support only the people that come through to them that really need the help.
I saw a fantastic example of the piece of work I was doing on digital twinning, which has got associations, you know, and building the railways that we're trying to do up and down the country, and just watching in the way that traditionally, you know, we'd always have to have people in field inspecting, examining, building, relocating. And this is a very intelligent, you know, next generation in which everything's got sensors against a box, you know, to be able to do it. And you see in today's world, you know, those kind of engineers now sitting in the room with literally three-dimensional representation of a piece of track with all the stuff and be able to track it in real time. And you've got, and what's amazing listening to those narratives is what that does to the ability to do life cycle management in a hugely effective way. And in many cases, you're repatriating people who've always lived in the field, sitting in the service environment, being much more effective. So I would imagine, going back to a key theme we had at the top of the hour, with the need in what is going to be difficult recessionary times to look at a more effective use of our budgets, to maybe bring some of that expertise back in-house, increase that productivity by having that expertise working possibly with our customer service colleagues to provide almost a seamless sort of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 kind of capability in a new operating model.
Yeah, and I think the challenge now, I think, that seems what you just said in a few sentences, Martin, is very difficult to achieve. When you talk to most organisation, that issue exists across the entire organisation, and I think where perhaps technology vendors are letting themselves down a little bit is just focusing perhaps too much on the contact centre when it's the whole journey. You know, I think we said this earlier on. If the journey itself is broken, you can put a bit of sticky plaster on it or something to help with that. But ultimately, you know, you need to address the underlying cause. And what we've learned in engagement with many customers is we often have to go back in and look at the end-to-end customer experience journey to resolve some of that. You know, technology can't solve everything, but we have expertise to deploy the technology in the right way, and otherwise we end up with more frustration, not less.
Yeah, no, well said. And I'm a total fan of that. So probably if we're addressing today primarily a contact center customer service audience, I suppose what we're implicitly saying is if this rings bells to you, then you should probably, you know, think of yourself as an influencer in terms of a much bigger opportunity to transform a complete end-to-end journey. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And I think making that consistent. So, you know, a lot of people have been talking about IVRs and chatbots. What we do with visual is we allow that to be launched from any of those channels, you know, and all of them. And sometimes our customers don't have all of those channels either at all, or they're just not mature. You know, Lana's been doing web chat and chatbots for a while, but many of our customers don't have all of that technology, and perhaps we're deploying that firstly for them as, you know, for the first time in some cases, or adding on to the parts they've got. But if you can do it consistently across all those channels so that you don't get one grade of service through the IVR and the voice and another through digital chatbots and self, that really does start to be a game changer. And you can do it, but there are many stakeholders in the business that you do need to align with that core journey.
So I celebrate the notion of you know, being able to line up a voice bot, a chat bot, and a visual bot. I love that. But also part of my whole mantra for many, many years has been that we don't want to introduce more point solutions into the space, you know, and we don't want to introduce more complexity and silos. So tell me a little bit, or give me some reassurance that if we are focusing upon introducing this new capability, that it's not too onerous to insert it. Because I do know, again, broader conversations that many of us have now embarked upon trying to make omni-channel work at last, you know, platforming in the cloud, single platform, bring it all together, data, workflow, channels, etc. In that kind of general trend, which is, I think, a hugely positive one. And by the way, that's also a multi-year journey. If I get excited about what you've just been saying today, I'm not creating myself a new island here. I can integrate.
Well, the idea is it's consistent across everything you do. So the integration is the key part of it. So often many of our customers, you would not see the Texi logo anywhere. So,
Right.
You know, we partner with lots of organizations that provide CRM tools. I won't give them a sale plug here, but you could have your CRM tool or your contact center engine, and embedded in that is Texi providing either the visual live support, or in most cases now we're seeing the artificial intelligence and self-service journey. So it's not about creating anything, you know, we're not creating new channels for people. Sometimes they have those channels and they don't work very well, so we enhance them. But we typically will help customers add value to what they've already got, and sometimes help them when we feel they're going into a silo with it. So part of it is technology, but the other part is just experience. We've done this so many times now, and being able to do it at scale. So, you know, we're training one product, but how do we train 60? And when it changes, how do we adapt that quickly? That's really what we're finding now. The technology is actually pretty good at learning devices, but the key step for us is not to silo it and make it scalable, because otherwise, you know, if Lionel was to come back to us and say, Andy, we need something else, can you build it for us, you know, and come back in a month's time, the problem's already there. So we need to be a lot quicker and a lot more scalable to deliver that value. And again, like you said, can absolutely reassure you and everyone else, it's not about creating new silos. It's about enhancing what you've already got to deliver that customer outcome.
I seem to remember from the conversation we had with Marcio, one of your colleagues, that the other part of way of talking about that is to say that, you know, what you've got is absolutely sort of API enabled. So, you know, it's dropping that into something, which means that you've got the ability to prioritize and route and triage in a common way, route in a common way, report in a common way. That's absolutely possible. So in other words, it can enhance what you've already currently, you know, invested in.
Yeah, we're a no-code SaaS-based technology, so that makes it exactly like, we don't want to go into acronyms, but that really is what we're about. We're not about, you know, complex integrations. We're about using simple integrations into what you've already got, that often we've already built, so that they can be quickly and scalably deployed.
Okay, so any other use cases that we want to sort of pull out just to sort of tell the story a bit more? I mean, let's imagine IoT is huge these days, obviously. loads and loads of devices that we have in our own home. I guess this is as applicable to a B2B environment as a B2C, just to make an obvious point.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of customers started with that, so they'll have this technology deployed for their internal teams. You know, I've got customers just gone live with it now. Their IT department is using it to support their retail stores. You know, right. You talked about fast food. There's you know, in the retail outlets, they're using it to, you know, get the outcomes deployed better in terms of making sure the milkshake machine or the ice cream machine is working better. And we mentioned an example of Heineken. They're using it when their pumps are down in the pub and you can't get your beer to fix that quicker. So it probably a subject more closer to mine and your hearts is get that beer quicker, but it could be deployed anywhere in those. So anywhere there's a thing, ultimately we can deploy that technology, but only where it's going to add some value, like resolve something quicker. Or get a better outcome. We also have seen quite a big demand in the B2B field for verification. Has that job not only been done, but how do we avoid someone having to go and do it again? Engineers completed it. So not only the knowledge that everyone's talking about, whether it's IVRs or digital or spoken, but all that information exists within our world, and we can verify that the job's been completed. Doesn't need a repeat, either call back into the contact center, or in some cases a dispatch of an additional engineer to go out and fix something. So the verification parts become particularly important to us, as is sharing that knowledge in the agent world, so we can assist them and upskill their capabilities.
That's really interesting. Luana, you've worked really hard for those last 50 minutes, and the chat has been flowing. I haven't managed to keep pace, apart from noticing that it's been a very active space. Do you want to give us a kind of a summary of some of the themes and topics that you've been getting into?
Yeah, so I think there was some questions just around digitizing IVRs and things like that, which I've kind of given I hope it's an all right answer. IVR is not quite my strong point, unfortunately. I wish I hadn't spoken about it now, but just about replicating what you can do in digital in a voice space, because customers want to interact in the way they want to. We've all had this preconception that we'll switch the voice off. Customers don't want that, so you need to give them the choice. And that's one thing we've been asked about quite a lot. And we're talking about ways of doing it with natural language as well, so you can just speak and you get fulfilled in the exact same way as you would if you were online. There seems to be quite a lot of interest in that, and some really good points being made. Questions around giving customers confidence in whether the bot's answering the question correctly, because so businesses are finding, and this is a very common problem, that customers don't have confidence in what the bot says. However, I bet you if they read an FAQ online, they'd believe it. So, some things we've done in the past, it sounds really noddy, but let the bot answer the question and then back it up with a web page or something like that has the same content, if you've got that option.
By the way, there's something I'd just like to plug in the middle of that. I mean, whether it's bots or IVRs or anything like that, to me, it's 1/3 technology. The rest of it is psychology. And it's all about understanding what we're doing right now. And it's interesting that in any form of communication, the actual topic, the actual content is a very minor part of creating understanding. The rest of it's all, whilst you were talking, for example, me and Andy were busily nodding away all the time, and it's all part of human communication, isn't it? Verifying that what you've said makes sense, and, disambiguating and correcting and all the rest of it. And when you've suddenly lost the liveness of it and you're trying to simulate that through automated communication, it's really tough. So one of the things I'm a big fan of is conversational design as being a specific emergent skill. And I know that you've got quite a few people in Vodafone who've invested in that, and they've got keen. And I'm keen to sort of promote that point to people, to say, in as much as the journeys need service design skill, conversations need conversation design skill if you're going to make that stuff work.
Absolutely. And it is a skill. It is a skill, just to be clear. It's not something you can tag on someone's job. It's quite specialist.
You can get skilled in that these days. Go and have a look online.
Yeah, loads of money in it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So there's your last question. How do you measure the success of Toby? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, it's nothing special, really. It's containment, isn't it? So you've got two elements. Does the bot contain the journey? Now, that will tell you one story. because some customers will abandon. I mean, we have things that we can use to see if a customer's abandoned versus contained. So if they fall out of the journey like halfway through, we know that they've probably just given up, rather than just assuming they're contained. But then what we do is we overlay that with a contact resolution measure. So did the customer then subsequently get in touch with us or not?
Yeah. Well, all makes very good sense. Yeah, that's perfectly good sense. Yeah. We're coming towards the top of the hour, Andy. So what
Can
else?
I just say one more thing? Sorry,
Yeah,
because there was a really interesting question. I'll be really quick, but
no, fine.
Around agent metrics, bots impact agent performance. Okay, it's really important to understand that. If you give agents more complicated queries, their AHT will go up. You might find the satisfaction goes down slightly. So you need to be, they're still valid measures, but you need to be dynamic in terms of how you measure your agents. Thank you.
Well, no, the other, let me just build on that point. Whilst we're doing it bit by bit by bit, at some point, we're going to have to step back and say, what are we measuring? What kind of skills do we need? What kind of profile are we recruiting? Are we actually paying the right amount for that kind of a person? And what's the future of the agent profile? At some point, all the success we're having in self-service begs the question of what do we need in the future? But there we go. That's another webinar, isn't it?
That's a long webinar, yeah.
That's a long one, isn't it? Andy, if I'm interested, where do I go to find out more?
Well, the CCMA team are going to publish just the details afterwards. You can obviously contact me directly. My details will be put up at the end of this. Kate will put them there. And also you can go to the TechSea website, which is techsea.me. Happily to answer any of your questions there. And I think, I'd just like to thank you, Martin and Luana, for the questions and obviously the people for asking them as well. There's some really interesting questions that have come out. So, I'm particularly interested in the agent side of it. It's not uncommon for agents, as Luana said, to have longer average handle time and some more complex, so they're getting the more complex stuff. To me, that's the value. We should always be trying to move our human capital up the value chain and skill and invest in that. That's certainly something I've learned and would encourage. And this is what we can do as an enabler to that as well.
Okay, so just before handing back to Kate, thank you, audience, for being a very cognitively active audience. And holding your own webinar at the same time. Congratulations. And I think there's been a lot of really good value exchange, which is actually why we have these events. So fantastic. It's been really good fun. Kate, over to you.
Thank you so much. And it's been it's great to sit back and listen to the lovely conversation and to see the interaction from the audience. So do thank you all for joining and for interacting through the chat and helping to really bring the conversation to life. I think that as we embark on different technologies, and it's great to get those hints and tips. So Andy, the key thing there, which I took away, was removing the silos and making it scalable to deliver value and enhancing what you already have. It's really kind of key, because so often we hear, oh, that's not working, so let's take it away and we'll start again. But actually you might have something, we just need to enhance on that and to build on that, because you're on a good journey. It may just need a little bit of tweaking to deliver the right outcome for you. So it's been really useful, and it's been great to hear. So thank you all so much to our panel for joining us today, and TechSea for supporting today's online seminar, and Martin, as always, for hosting. Really appreciate you for taking the time and joining us today. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and we'll hope to see you very soon.
Thank you all.
Take care.